Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the photo of the week on the Daily Critique. This week's photo of the week was created by Jenny, who's a beginning photographer from Canada. Jenny shot this with a Canon DSLR, 78mm lens effectively, exposure trio, ISO 200, f5.6, and 4/10 of a second. I want to come back and talk about the shutter speed in just a minute. I want to break Jenny's backstory down into two parts. First part of the backstory just identifies her subject matter. I think for a lot of people this could be abstract. I think for a lot of people too, even though it's sort of semi-abstract, you could probably without any backstory get a sense that this is somebody that is somehow performing with fire, and in fact that is the subject matter of the shot. Jenny says she was traveling in Mexico. The resort where she was staying invited everybody to a beach party where there were performers who were juggling fire. That's the subject matter of this image. Let's talk about the shutter speed here, 4/10 of a second. One of the things I love about Jenny's photograph is this idea of juxtaposing a real strong sense of implied motion with the twirling of the flames here, and then being able to come in on the face in particular and see all of the features of the face in profile here. So a mix of the static or the moment in time, kind of the tradition of what we think about photography, and then because of this movement on a pretty long shutter here implying motion. To me it's a really beautiful thing that we can do in still photography, really beautiful way to suggest motion or the passage of time. So I just wanted to talk about a range of shutter speeds. If you're shooting something like this yourself, you might play around with really from 1 second to about a 15th or 30th of a second. This is a great range of shutter speeds for these kinds of scenarios where a human being at some points is standing still, but there's some part of their body that's still moving, or they're swinging something or moving something. This range of shutter speeds in 4/10 of a second is within this. Really great place to be if you want to juxtapose these two ideas, static with motion, this particular scenario. Let me talk about other things that I like about Jenny's image, and we'll come back to the other part of her backstory that contains, I think, a very powerful inspiration for all of us, and then she's got a really profound question I'll talk about a little bit at the end of the video. In addition to loving what's happening with motion in this photograph, one of the things that I love about this image is that the graphic nature of it and the high contrast and really powerful archetype of these two circles and this field of black, very bright circles, and the face in the middle of it, all that to me is just sort of like a sledgehammer. It hits you over the head and it draws you in. But then when I get inside of this and I move in closer, there's this outrageous subtlety of detail in here that starts to tell another story and suggest a very powerful archetype connected to the overall image. When I look in here, at least for myself, what I see in this filigreed detail is the suggestion of feathers, and I almost get the sense of ancient, relative to us, people that are dressed in headdress. This whole archetypal, very ancient idea of human beings being able to fly or meld with an animal that can fly, the thunderbird. I'm getting a sense of it here in the headdress. There's a suggestion here of a feather with wings that gets suggested again for me down in here, and then really sort of literally and figuratively kind of pushing everything over the top is this shape right here. It's almost like the thunderbird comes back in here, and it's not just the shape to me that's going along with the details, overall feeling, it's also the implication of movement or energy. When I look at this image with the main figure sort of being centered and the symmetry of this, it's kind of easy for me to imagine that without the tail and this shape in particular, that even though there's this outrageous implication of motion, the leaning, the hands forward, and all of this, things could become static. I just love the way this detail in this particular frame goes along with the archetype of sort of the feathers and the suggestion of bird, but also what it does to this image in terms of making it very high energy and moving everything along. Archetype of fire is obviously really important. It's just a stunning image. It's one of these images that can just have such an incredible dual impact. From far away draws you in, and then for me, once I get there, there's this other level of story that's very subtle and puts me in a totally different headspace. I go a lot more inside. When we look at the other part of Jenny's backstory, here's another really powerful takeaway, and it isn't just the technique here and some of the composition things that we just talked about in archetypes. Jenny says when she walked down to the beach, she knew she wanted to photograph these performers, but she's a beginning photographer and she doesn't have any idea to do this. she doesn't quit and she doesn't stop. She doesn't say, well, I'm in public. If I'm fumbling around with my camera, maybe I'll look stupid. What she does is something very profound, even though it's very straightforward. She says, I just started playing, and I played with the numerous settings until I got the settings the way I wanted, so I was getting sort of the general look. And then she takes it even further. She says, I was patient and made myself believe that I could anticipate what would occur before it happened. And so she ends up getting to this moment where the person who's juggling is still enough so that she does get the mix of static with implied motion. I really want to encourage you to let yourself be inspired by what Jenny is saying here. I just got interviewed by a major news organization about creativity. I don't know if anything will come out of the interview in terms of it getting published or anything, but I had 30 minutes and they interviewed apparently a lot of different people, and I spent a lot of my 30 minutes talking about the power of being a beginner again. And I said that a big part of the reason that we don't do that is just fear and all kinds of beliefs that stop us from doing it. We may not believe that we're creative, so we don't even let ourselves get going. Then we may have beliefs that are so connected to the idea of us being competent that we will not allow ourselves to have a new experience where we can be out of control and make mistakes. But mistakes are a huge part of being creative. Maybe it was George Bernard Shaw that said, hey, it's called trial and error, not trial and success. And when we're practicing and the error, we're conscious of it not being where we want to go yet. And so we go, well, this is what I tried. Now let me do another trial. That is the way that we move forward. Unfortunately, for most of us, what we do is we get to a place where we're sort of happy with our success. And then what do? We just keep doing the same exact thing over and over again. There is no more trial, really. I mean, we go to the Grand Canyon, then we go to the Grand Tetons. We're doing the same exact thing in both places, and we're bored, and our viewer is bored. I just really want to encourage you to have the courage to be a beginner to the point where you can screw it up, where it's truly a new experience. I want to finish up here with a question that could let us go on and on and on, but Jenny says that as a beginning photographer, she wonders if pro photographers or real photographers are using the darkroom to modify their photographs. Or is that cheating? Is it an essential tool or is it cheating? One, I would say that, the camera is a machine that can allow you to create a finished artifact. And just the level of capture. I mean, you can hook your camera up to a printer and take a picture and never think about it, and then a print will come out and you could be happy with it. So you can do it however you want, and the technology would allow you to never think after pushing the button. But the reality of photography outside of photojournalistic endeavors or endeavors with a camera where it is being used purely as a documentary tool, the truth is there are not many realities that work well with a camera in that way. Start to become very, very limited if in fact you can't do anything after the fact to your pictures. The truth is, for the most part in photography, that what happens after the picture is taken is critical to the photographic artist being able to achieve the vision that they have, even for photographic artists that do want to quote-unquote keep it real. Why? Because the camera in a lot of situations doesn't really do a good job in one frame of recording color the way we see it, or recording contrast, dynamic range. Even a photographer that wants to keep it real may have a huge skill set to give you a print where they can go, I really feel like this is very, very close to the way I did experience all these different elements of design as they're related to this particular reality. This is what I would say to somebody that was just starting out in photography, because I'm not a photojournalist. I would say that the finishing part is the most important part, because it will end up having a huge effect on your capture part. It's not really until you understand the finishing part, what it takes to get from the camera to the photograph that you want to share with somebody. It's not really until you understand that you can then truly be in charge on the front end. And I really encourage you to study the history of photography. Look at the way photographers have had a big impact on this art form. Look at the way they thought about finishing, and then go from there. I'd like to say a lot more about that, but time's going to keep me from doing it. Fantastic image from Jenny. Hats off to her, to being brave, and for having the courage to, in my opinion, be a real artist. A real artist to me is somebody that keeps reinventing, they keep pushing, they keep allowing themselves to actually have a life. Your life is new experience. It's not doing the same thing over and over and over again. How can you surprise yourself or move forward or continue to have a sense of wonder if you're just repeating yourself ad nauseum over and over and over again? You can't. And it can be uncomfortable to take these chances, but to me it's where it's at, and this image is such a profound inspiration in so many different ways connected to that. Thanks to Jenny, thanks to you for being here. Hope to see you again real soon on the Mind Fly.